So hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today for this webinar of this series, introducing the research priority teams of the ICARP IV process. My name is Nina Lavrenteva. I work with the European Polar Board, and I'm here joined by the co-chairs of the Research Priority Team 4, Arctic Research, Cooperation and Diplomacy. So here with me are Malgorzata Smieszek-Rice from the Arctic University of Norway and Norwegian College of Fishery, Jennifer Spence from Belfer Center, Harvard Kennedy School, and Tom Berry from University of Akureyri in Iceland. I would just like to very briefly introduce you to the ICARP IV process, and I'm sure our co-chairs will explain you more about this. So the International Arctic Science Committee, IASC, in cooperation with many partners worldwide, are coordinating a multi-year planning process for the 4th International Conference on Arctic Research Planning. It lasts from 2022 to 2026 and engages Arctic researchers, indigenous peoples, policymakers, residents, and stakeholders from around the world to discuss the state of Arctic science and place that Arctic occupies in global affairs and systems. So between 2024 and 2025, the ICARP IV International Steering Committee convened 7 research priority teams that will work with the input provided through the ICARP IV community engagement process to define the knowledge gaps and research priorities for their topic area, and to identify and suggest opportunities to enhance synergies across existing and potential research plans. So the European Polar Board is very happy to host this webinar series for the RPTs. We will start with the presentation from our co-chairs, and we also have a Q&A box available for your comments and questions throughout the whole webinar. So please don't hesitate to use it. There is also a chat for this. With that, I would like to give the floor to our co-chairs.
Great.
And now you can.
All right. Thank you very much, Nina. Thank you to the European Polar Board for giving us this opportunity. Welcome, everyone, on behalf of co-chairs of RPT4 of the ICARP process. So let me first move and start sharing the brief presentation that we prepared for you to tell you a little bit how our work in Research Priority Team 4, dedicated to questions of Arctic research cooperation and diplomacy, looks like. So Nina, I'm sure that many of you have heard before about the ICARP process, and Nina already provided few comments, but for those less familiar with that, I think it is also worth to mention that ICARP IV that we are now a part of is yet another iteration of the initiative that started within the Arctic research community already in 1995. So it was a time when the first ICARP first was convened, and since then it took place at 10 years interval. One of the things that has been that characterized ICARPs over this time was that as much as the event, as the process in 1995 was very much the discussion among scientists working on Arctic issues, the range of stakeholders involved in Arctic discussions has been gradually expanding over those years. And we definitely see it now at this point of time in 2024, 2025, when we are working for the last phases of this ICARP. So it was already mentioned that one of the main points of ICARP IV is to discuss the state of Arctic science, but also the place that Arctic occupies today in the global affairs. And it is fair to say that this place is rapidly increasing its importance. It's also very rapidly changing context. So those are all issues that matter to identifying the knowledge gaps as well as Arctic research priorities for the next decade. Of course, identifying gaps and priorities would not be sufficient on its own. So a huge part of our discussions of this process is as well concerned as well exploring avenues how those can be addressed. And it won't be surprised to probably anyone on this call during this webinar that, of course, one of the milestones in the next decade is the next international polar year that at this point is planned for 2032, 2033. So even though the ICARP IV, if you look at this, it actually extends beyond the next IPY. Of course, a large part of our efforts and focus is on the next IPY. So Nina kindly already mentioned the research priority teams that the ICAR process has convened, and you have a list of those here, and I'm just sharing them for the overview, because all the information about this process you can find through very regularly updated the website of ICARP. All these RPTs will have their individual webinars. So two of them already took place. The videos are available on YouTube. And for us, it is really those webinars, this dialogue that we are hoping to have with you is yet another chance, another venue to engage with as wide community, as wide range of stakeholders as possible. So when it comes to our team, so all three of us, the co-chairs of this initiative, Jennifer, Tom, myself, Jennifer and Tom will take over in the later part of this webinar. So we are co-chairs, and sorry, not that everyone's photos fitted on this slide, but it is very important to say that yes, we are the co-leads of this process, but it's really through a very wide membership at this point, reaching close to 40 members from 17 countries that we are carrying out this work. So as already mentioned, well, our task as well for all other RPTs in this process concern defining knowledge gaps and the research priorities for this specific topic of Arctic scientific cooperation and diplomacy. And here in this slide, you are seeing Arctic scientific cooperation and diplomacy, which actually, after our first meeting and workshop in Edinburgh during the Arctic Science Summit, we in March this year, we decided collectively to change into Arctic research cooperation and diplomacy to make sure that we count also for different knowledge systems, that only science, that we consider Arctic research at large, not only this related to Western science, but also very cognizant and weaving in other knowledge systems, first of all, indigenous knowledge. As you can see, well, exploring synergies and making recommendations will be one of our key tasks. But apart from what you can see here, one of the aspects that is particular to our research priority team and also research priority teams 5, 6, 7 is that we are this team and the ICARP is included for the very first time. So of course it has a lot to do with significantly deteriorated environment for international collaboration in the Arctic, but it's also underlining the importance of collaboration and of diplomatic efforts to facilitate scientific cooperation in the region, whether we are speaking about the next IPY or beyond. Importantly as well, whereas some of the RPTs, and you can listen about details of their work in other webinars, whereas some RPTs are oriented quite exclusively toward research, research questions. In our case, and that's been also something that came up very quickly in discussions within our team, was that on the one hand, we see our task as defining research priorities, but also making sure that we address the practice of research cooperation and diplomacy, that it's not only questions that researchers would be addressing in their work moving forward, but also those engaged with scientific cooperation, with diplomacy, whether we are speaking of diplomats, research managers, that we also address their work in this process. So how have things worked up to date? So as said, But basically, the kickoff for all the RPTs took place during the Arctic Science Summit Week in March this year in Edinburgh, Scotland. And as all RPTs, we had there our first two-day hybrid meeting. So we're fortunate that many members of our RPT were there in person. But of course, not everyone could join. So it was great that we could have the hybrid format of this meeting. The first day in Edinburgh was open to public because we wanted to ensure that our discussions and that we can collect input from as wide community as possible. And then we moved to closed discussions, which among others led to this change of title of our group that I've already mentioned. But it also helped us identify sub-themes in our work, and I'm going to come to them in the next slide. To provide you with a brief overview how things will look moving forward. Now, one of the main events ahead of all of us, and by all of us, I mean all RPTs, but also International Steering Committee of the whole ICARP process. There is a meeting, the retreat that will take place in Akureyri in Iceland already in a few weeks' time, where not only we will be sharing the initial results of our work, but most importantly, we'll have a chance for cross-cutting discussions among all RPTs, as well as members of the committee. So whereas this event is more internal to the whole process, and still it will include more than 70 persons there, one of the main events, if actually not the main event, will take place in March next year during the Arctic Science Summit Week 2025, and it will be ICARP IV Summit. So the whole event will take place in Boulder, Colorado. I'm going to come to that in a moment. But this is really during the ICARP Summit where all the RPTs will be presenting preliminary results of our work during the town hall meetings, but also where our plan is to launch consultations on those results and continue engagement with as diverse and as many stakeholders as possible. Moving into the next year, at this point, it's been decided that all RPTs, all research priority teams, they will produce their own reports. There is a format that's been agreed for those reports, but it's by October next year that all the research priority teams will deliver their individual reports and put to the ICARP for International Steering Committee. And based on those reports, final result of the ICARP process will be presented at the Arctic Science Summit Week 2026 in Denmark. This still feels like a long time into the future. Time will fly fast, so you will be hearing more about our work surely in the meantime. But before I tell you about a few opportunities for closer engagement with our work, I wanted also to give you an overview of the sub-themes of the subgroups that we've excuse me, that we've come up with during the workshop, during the two-day meeting in Edinburgh. And I should say the graph that you see on the slide, it is not to be read on purpose, but it is actually to illustrate that the sub-themes that you see that are listed here and which include vision, objectives, impact of Arctic research cooperation, challenges to this cooperation, funding as a huge theme without surprise, tools for Arctic research cooperation, as well as discussion of durability of Arctic research cooperation. They actually very much arose from the bottom-up discussions that we had during the workshop. So it's actually, graph is a nice illustration of all the themes, all the issues that members of the group and also of wider audience were bringing into the discussion, and then which during our two-day meeting we're trying to group and to distill how perhaps we could organize our work around those and make sure that we really captured what people found relevant to our topic. That being said, it is now we are moving into the fall, which is always a busy conference season for many, and continuing engagement and reaching out to various audiences has been from the very beginning the one of the most important outreach aspects of our work. So for everyone attending Arctic Circle Assembly in few weeks in Reykjavik in Iceland, um, there will be several sessions related to the ICARP process itself, but the one that I listed here and which will take place on Friday during the conference in the afternoon. This one has been put specifically proposed by our research priority team. And this is the discussion where on the one hand, through presentations of, among others, Ambassador David Bolton from the White House. So we want to focus on questions of tools, available tools for Arctic scientific cooperation, questions of indigenous knowledge, because we'll be lucky to have with us one of the co-chairs of the whole ICAR process, as well as matters of funding for presentations of Arctic Science Funders Forum. So we warmly, if you're planning to attend the assembly, we very much encourage you and would be very happy to see you there. In addition, through the part of the structure effort to reach out to stakeholders that perhaps are not always actively involved in the discussion, in collaboration with the Arctic Economic Council, will be holding a closed roundtable discussion with representatives of business community. And it's Michaela Hood, who is the leader of one of the sub-teams that you've seen before. She's been in the lead of this effort with the help of others. And we are hoping this is going to provide as well additional input to our work and to make sure that we can account for also the needs of business community in our deliberations. Moving forward to the next conference, to Arctic Frontiers in January 2025, that will take place in Tromsø in Norway, so in place where I'm actually based. We wanted to particularly draw your attention to one of the science team. If you go to the website, it is the second team there, and it's titled International Polar Year 5, so the one we're talking about, Research Data and Science Cooperation. And that's the science team, that's the proposal that we've put together with Research Priority Team 2 related to observation. And you can find the description of the session there. But importantly, this is why we're plugging here. Deadline for abstracts is tomorrow. So there is still time to consider your submissions, and we would be very happy to hear from you if you think your work fits this theme. And then end of September is a very busy month for deadline for submissions of abstract. And here we are coming back to ICARP IV Summit because the deadline for submissions for over 60 sessions that will be taking place in Boulder is the upcoming Monday, September 30th. So if you go for the sessions, they're actually many of them are organized, also connected to the research priority teams. So you can find those relevant to our work, but also cross-cutting teams, other RPTs. And surely everyone is very much encouraged to submit their abstracts to that conference, because the whole idea of the ICARP IV Summit and actually of the whole Arctic Science Summit Week next year is Arctic research planning for the next decade. And both the organizers of the summit and IASC and wider community consider that summit the crucial milestone for shaping the next IPY. So again, one deadline coming up tomorrow, and then the next one on Monday. So hopefully some of you will pick those up. That being said, that's a very brief overview of where we stand at this point. There will be some questions from us moving forward, and I will turn for those to Jen and Tom, and then we are also hoping for questions for you for having the discussion. But before that, I wanted to plug in here that it's also, of course, we have this webinar, but we are also more than happy to hear from you, from folks broadly, with input, with comments, with feedback to our work, but also if you would like to stay in contact and learn more about results of our work as we'll be moving forward, this is the email where we always would like to hear from you. So with that, thank you. Questions or comments, and I might just turn this off and I'll turn to Jen and Tom. Thank you.
Yes, so you're welcome to either put questions into the Q&A or you can raise your hand, and we have this wonderful power to unmute you. And if you have any questions about this, and then we're going to move into asking you some questions. We're going to use this as an opportunity to seek your input. But first, we wanted to see if there were any questions for us about the work that we're doing, or anything that Gosia has so expertly provided an overview on. So we'll do the awkward silence for a minute while we wait and see if anybody wants to raise their hand or pose any questions. And I also know that there are some of our team members have joined us as well. So if there's anything that any of you would like to add or emphasize, you're also welcome to raise your hand, and we'd be happy to unmute you so you can add your comments as well. Oh, we have someone raising their hand there, and it's Clive. Hi, Clive. Here, I'm going to give you the power to talk. Clive, please.
Okay, speak. This is what we like. Just a question about mapping out existing landscape for cooperation. Is there a sort of master mapping of that has been done? I guess I'm thinking of it in terms of, for those of you who don't know, I'm on the board of Polar Knowledge Canada, and we recently met with USR and agreed to do some cooperation with them. So I'm thinking, like, there's all of that sort of thing that already exists captured somewhere.
It's a great question, Clive. I wouldn't say that we've been thinking about stakeholder mapping in terms of who the different audiences for this are, but in terms of actual cooperation mechanisms, we haven't mapped it. I mean, through our various sub-theme groups, it's not to say we couldn't explore that as one of the things that we could do, but that isn't something we've done so far. I don't know, Tom or Gosia, if you wanted to elaborate or comment.
I think that would be a very challenging task to take on because it's constantly changing. So I'm not sure the value of what that would be.
I guess from my perspective, the value would be that we really, I mean, everybody knows a piece of this, right? Everybody knows a piece of what already exists. Everybody knows chunks of their own particular geographical or stakeholder knowledge. But I think it would be useful in the context of trying to map out what needs to be done over the next 10 years to see what has already been done. And yes, I appreciate that that's a very large and complex task.
Yeah, no, fair enough. And I mean, maybe it's an imperfect effort in the sense that within an acknowledgement that you couldn't possibly map everything, but perhaps you could do some broad strokes of those and see that. So I mean, thanks, Clive. I think we can sort of discuss that with our team in terms of how we could explore sort of what the existing mechanisms are and what the implications of that are for where there might be gaps, for example. So that's great. Thank you. We have another question that's come in through the Q&A. So the question is, oh, now I've lost there it is. Many thanks for the presentation. When you were referring to cooperation as part of ICARP IV's contribution, would this englobe only scientific cooperation, or does it include other issues beyond science and environment, such as political cooperation? So, Tom, did you want to take that on?
Yeah, I would say that we're not focusing on political cooperation, other than in the sense that scientific diplomacy or science is one strand of that, but it's not the main focus of what we're looking at.
Although
that's how I would interpret this.
Yeah, although we are looking at diplomacy, so
Yeah.
the relationship between research cooperation and diplomacy. So
Yeah.
The presumably some of what we're looking at is the relationship between research cooperation and the political sphere, but not so much to focus in on the political sphere for the political sphere itself, but rather in terms of its relationship to research cooperation, I think would be sort of the nuance of that. Gosia, if you want to say something.
Just to add to that, as it was already mentioned, yes, political cooperation per se is not our focus. Yet I think there is and I hope it won't raise any flags, but it also shouldn't come as any surprise that particularly now we found ourselves in the situation that scientific cooperation in the Arctic is, of course, very much entangled with political developments of different sorts. So that's obviously something that we need to account for. That being said, it was also an important part of our discussions in Edinburgh that as tense and still novel in some ways situation we found ourselves now for the last couple of years is that moving forward, we don't focus only on the current developments, but really think into the future. And this is maybe where I could say a word about the vision part that you've seen as one of our sub-teams. This is actually the sub-team that the whole group is working on, because it's basically, as lofty the word vision might sound, it really comes down to the question of, if everything that we put forward, all the recommendations are realized, how scientific cooperation in the Arctic would look like in 10 years. And yes, we might be speaking about the IPY, but we are even looking beyond that. So this is only to underline that we are also trying not to get stuck in this year, next 2 years, but really think a little further or even further into the future. Thanks, Dan.
That's great. We have another question. So the question is, how does your organization reach or educate Western science researchers in regard to Indigenous engagement in Arctic regions? Is this a goal of your organization? So anybody want to take this? I'm happy to sort of, I think Gosia touched on it a bit, that one of the questions, that one of the issues that our teams sort of grappled with early on was that originally we were given the title Arctic Science Cooperation, and that there was a decision made by the group early on that we wanted to recognize different knowledge systems and to recognize, and that was where the decision to say research instead of science was brought in, and so that it acknowledges or intends to acknowledge different knowledge systems and obviously in particularly Indigenous knowledge systems, since that's an important priority within ICARP IV and within Arctic research cooperation generally. In terms of how we are engaging with Indigenous scholars and knowledge holders through our process. This is something that the ICARP process is trying to grapple with more broadly as well. And so there is a dedicated group specifically looking at ensuring Indigenous engagement, and that's both within each of the RPTs, but then across the RPTs as well. And so that is an absolute priority. We also have we're lucky to have as part of our team, both a number of Indigenous peoples, but also in particular one of the co-chair of the ICARP process. But again, this is so it is recognized as an important part of the work that we're doing. It's not going to be to answer the questions, it's going to be to ask the questions and to identify the gaps around how to do this engagement. But I wouldn't suggest that our team is in any way well placed to achieve some of those objectives of ensuring proper full Indigenous engagement in Arctic research cooperation. Gosia?
Just to add to that, because part of the question was also the word educating, and it's also the question of education and sharing knowledge. So everything what Jen said, and specifically RPT5, which deals with Indigenous-led methodologies of Arctic research. There is also RPT6, which is actually focused on education in and about the Arctic, as well as knowledge sharing. With those teams, those are actually teams as ours, these two, they haven't been part of previous ICARP processes. So already inclusion of this, it's the reflection of importance of these topics, and having them put into the process. The last thing I'll say is that also the co-chair of the entire international steering committee of whole ICARP process is Indigenous person, Dali Sambodoro, the former president of the ICC. So she's the co-chair of the process as a reflection of these discussions and making sure that Indigenous knowledge is rightly and incorporated isn't any longer the right word. And I think we're still trying to find a word which wouldn't be incorporate, but something more. That's exactly what we were trying to do with you. And I like it too.
Yeah, the other thing I would say is what this is a good demonstration of is how incredibly important it is, this things like the retreat that is going to happen in a couple of weeks, where the research priority teams will have an opportunity to speak to each other and talk about some of those cross issues and how important that's going to be in the products that we produce. There's what our team is doing, but also we need to sort of elevate that to what does this mean for recommendations moving forward that sort of cross all of the research priority teams. Any other? We have another question. Yeah. So I will now give you the power to talk. Please, Bismay.
Amazing. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Awesome. Okay.
We can see your picture of an aircraft carrier as well.
Sorry?
Sorry, I was just joking.
No, all good. So first of all, thank you so much for this amazing presentation. I'm actually a master's student at Carleton University in Ottawa, Canada, and I'll be volunteering at the Arctic Circle General Assembly. So I'm looking forward to meeting you all. So my question was, so if we were to sum up the entire RPT4 in one question, would you say that this would be the question? So how can we improve diplomacy and research cooperation between Arctic stakeholders in light of current geopolitical tensions? Would you say more or less that's the question? Thank you.
I would say that's certainly a question that we're grappling with. I think that it was one of the motivations for creating the research priority team is this idea that there are shifting dynamics. But having created the team, I think that there's a broader array of issues we're also trying to sort of tackle, and I think this comes back again to Gosia's point is one of the things we've come to think about quite a bit is the different audiences that we're trying to reach. So one of the ones that the easiest one that always comes to my mind is funders. And that, how do we ensure more sort of coordinated and effective funding of research, and how can research cooperation across, like how to, and the circumpolar kind of logic around that. So to me, that's an example of another way that research cooperation can be quite important, and it may be affected by changing geopolitics, but it's not driven by or defined by geopolitics. I don't know, Tom or Lucia, if you wanted to add it.
I think you captured it fine. I mean, of course, we're in a sensitive time geopolitically at the moment, but that's not always going to be the case. So it's just how we can further the efforts of science to inform better diplomacy.
Yes, I would.
Yes.
I would also add that, and Jen already reiterated this point of looking into the future, but I think it is also important to recognize that even if we go back few years and we are not looking at the much hate and geopolitical tensions, and everyone probably knows what we are talking about here, it is also important to recognize that it's such are the needs of international scientific community working in the Arctic, that the need for improvement, for facilitation, for support to this practice has been always there. Like starting exactly, funding was mentioned, like the fact that it's that doing research in the Arctic on average is 7 to 8 times more expensive, the same kind of research than in lower latitudes, is always present a driver of how we can facilitate that. One of the challenges, and of course, organizing or orienting our thinking around the next IPY is a great opportunity for this, but it's always a question that up to now, and we can be looking at Arctic states, but also non-Arctic states, most of the countries until now, when they have calls for proposals for scientific research, they fund their own scientists. Hardly ever part of this funding goes to international partners. There are exceptions to this, and that's very good, but still putting funds together for successful, effective, and also not bureaucratically nightmarish collaboration is a challenge. So it's just that I kind of went here a little bit into details, but it's also to elevate this a little bit from discussion only about the geopolitical context, and realize that this need, as we are having more vessels, but constant infrastructure needs in the region is always there. So it's not only the present tension, but also wider issues that drive our discussions.
Makes sense.
And,
Thank you so
and
much.
we look forward to seeing you at Arctic Circle.
Absolutely. And I look forward to putting these ideas in potentially my paper or my abstract that I might submit. So thank you so much.
Excellent. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, any other questions? If not, we're going to ask you questions. So don't go away. So if there's no other questions from the group, then we're going to turn to using this opportunity as to seek your input on some of the questions that we've been generally asked to explore. But first, we thought we would do sort of a small poll to get a sense of the types of expertise and the types of who's in the audience. So we're going to start with some basic polling kind of information, and I'll start with one which is just to which I'm launching now, which is just for you to indicate the country that you're from, so that we can have everybody's answers to the country that you're from, and then we're going to share with you the results of our poll, so you can get a sense of who's in the audience and the diversity of people that are here. And I'll just give it a couple minutes, or well, not a couple minutes, a minute or two, and then I will end the poll and share the results. All right. We're ready, so I'm gonna end the poll and share the results. I think I'm sharing the results, but I can't actually see them myself. Nina, what am I doing wrong?
I'm not sure. So are they displayed for you?
No, I can't see anything.
Yeah. Well, this is no fun. I can't see the answers either.
Oh, we have maybe.
Oh, we've got two
Mika.
people raising their hand. Maybe Michael knows since he's raising his
Okay.
hand. Michael, do you have the secret answer?
I might not have the secret answer. I can only answer for myself. I only see my own response. So 100%
so
of the
everyone's
people
seeing
are
their
from
own.
Germany,
All right.
There we are.
whatever that means.
That's a flawed system then. Well, that's not much fun at all then, is it?
On top, it says you are viewing the poll results shared by the host. So
Yeah. Well, that makes sense to me, but why it's only sharing?
yeah, that's awkward.
Well, if we can't resolve it now, maybe Nina can help us and we can share after the call.
Yeah. Well, yes, for sure we can do that. Well, let's try it. Try it because that's the short answer. Let's see. I'm gonna try the next one, which is actually multiple choice, and we'll see if that works better.
And sorry,
Yes.
I'll just address it because Clive put a question, or he made the comment that he couldn't actually access the quiz, the poll. So yeah, in case that it didn't work for a few persons.
Sometimes
very sorry about those.
It wouldn't be a Zoom meeting if we didn't have something that didn't work for us. So
yes, apologies for that. But sometimes for some people, the pop-up windows are blocked by their
yeah, the
apps.
pop-up
So
windows.
like it's possible that you don't see it because of the settings of your application on your laptop or
Right. Okay. Well, we have the results, or I hope we have the results, and we can share them after. Let's try another. Let's try. We'll try the one that's multiple choice and see if that works better. So this one is a question around what sector you represent, and by sector being academia, government, private sector, non-governmental organization. And we'll see if we have better. Oh, so I can see the results.
Works better.
I can see them now as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So this works much better. So this is reassuring. All right. So we can see that we have in the audience we have more than 50% from academia, but we do have some government representation and some private sector representation, not a lot from non-governmental organizations. And then we have some others, which I always, whenever there's an other question, it's one of those, I wonder what they're from. So if those who are the others if you feel like putting it in the chat, then you're welcome to do that. You don't have to, of course, but if you want to share where you're from, you're welcome to share in the chat. And we will do that. And then we'll have that knowledge beyond that. So that's the sector. So that's great. Thank you. And then now, did everybody see that, or was it just? Now I'm worried that anyway. Okay, the next one is age demographic. All right. Interesting.
I wonder why we put 15 to 25 instead of if there's any 15-year-olds on the call. Then.
Tom. I made it up. It was just
Although Jen, and it's kind of, and we hope that, well, as attendees to this webinar, we very much see that so many of those things are a part of open discussion, and this is really where we are inviting you all to contribute. Actually, looking at this result, it makes me also think about the youth outreach of and engagement of students and in the discussions, because I think, well, of course, it's just thinking very schematically about things, but the next group would be already postgrad students. So the engagement of students, and perhaps is this something that we could consider moving forward? Could be perhaps one aspect coming from this quiz.
So thank you for allowing us to geek out and look at our and assess what this means for our engagement strategy. So thank you for that. Okay, so now we're going to move on to some more open questions. And for these, again, you're welcome to write an answer. These are actually questions that all of the RPTs are being invited to ask. So the first one, and you can either raise your hand and we welcome you to just answer the question and we share that with you, or you can write your answer if you prefer. And this will be inputs for us. And so this is are there specific priorities or sub-themes or challenges related to Arctic research cooperation that you think are particularly important? So again, we will use this as an input to our process. If there are things that you think are particularly important for our team to look at, we welcome your input. And again, okay, so Visme, I see you've raised your hand, so I'm gonna
may I just quickly say, okay, we didn't see the results of the first question, but I can briefly just tell you now because I can see it on the back end. So we have participants from Norway, US, Finland, Canada, Japan, Greenland, Germany, Japan, US, UK, Turkey, Canada, Ireland, France, Canada, USA.
Wonderful. That's great. Thank you very much. Yeah. Very interesting. So we have some diversity. That's good to see. All right. So Visme, I'm going to allow you to talk if you'd like to answer the question.
Yes, for sure. So again, I think I have just 2 or 3 points that I wanted to point out. One was, again, I'm focusing on security and defense specifically. So diplomacy comes with a caveat of defense, in my opinion. So I think Arctic research, because when it comes to research, Western countries and NATO specifically are risk averse in terms of inviting, let's say, Russian or Chinese scientists. Again, the conference in Boulder, Colorado, I saw the invitee list and the panelists, and I was amazed that a lot of scientists, we do have scientists invited from Russia and China, which is amazing. However, I think we need one point to consider could be that why is there such an hesitation in this is solely science research, scientific cooperation, nothing related to defense, then why in, let's say, Climate Change and Security Center for Excellence in Montreal, which NATO recently opened up, why is there such a hesitation in, let's say, inviting those countries for scientific cooperation only? So I think that was my point. Yeah, I brought all the points together. So this is one major point that I had.
That's great. Thank you very much. So that it's a good question, and those are the types of the questions I think that we need to explore. I see we've got people putting in written responses as well. For the written responses, we will collect them. We're not going to share back the answers now, but we'll certainly keep that there. Or thank you so much for your input, and I'm very much looking forward to reading your answers. I'm gonna see, I don't know if it's possible, but in the interests of allowing people to, I don't want to lose anybody who is still trying to respond. So I'm going to try and leave that one open and open another one and see if the whole system explodes on me. Let's see if it will let me. It seems like it's still letting me. Okay, so I'm going to try going to the next question. If there anybody I'm going to say to anybody who's still typing, maybe save your answer, just in case something funny happens when I do this. But otherwise, I'm going to try and open this next one. No, it won't let me because we're still doing the other one. So again, I'll ask that if you're still writing something for the first poll question, that you save your answer, and maybe you can email it to us in that group, or you can put it into the Q&A here and we'll collect it that way, but I don't want to lose your response. So I'm going to end that poll now. And now moving to the next question. So our next question is, one that, as you may have deduced, is near and dear to our hearts, which is who should the audience's users of the ICARP IV process output. So you've heard us talk about researchers, and of course, researchers are one of the key audiences, but especially for us, we think of policymakers as an important audience, for example. But are there other audiences that you think we should be trying to target when we are doing our research and thinking about what we're doing? And again, you can either answer in writing and we'll collect those responses. And if you prefer, you're welcome to raise your hand and we will take your responses by giving you the power to speak. So, and while we're waiting for people to answer, Tom will tap dance for you. He won't sing because apparently that's not a good thing.
I might drink.
There you go. You can also, you can also put it into the chat. We have the webinar chat if that's easier for you. We'll welcome any form of input is most welcome.
And perhaps to add to that, it can be also very specific. It's, of course, we can be speaking about big groups, but also if you want to be very concrete in terms of you think this would be perfect venue to receive the results of our group or to engage with us, all the suggestions will be very much appreciated.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, Gosia. Like if literally, like if you have contact information for someone that you think we should talk to, we welcome anything, any specifics you may have. I'll give that another few seconds here. We do have lots of answers coming in, but I'll warn you before I'm going to close the poll so that if you are still writing, you can save your answer and hopefully send it to us by another means.
To mention here for everyone, the email address that we've included in the presentation, you can find now also in the chat. So that's a way that we would be very happy to hear from you for.
All right, so I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna ask anybody who hasn't submitted their answer to either submit or save their answer and send it to us by another means. And I'm gonna move to the next question. Oh, there we go. All right, and I'm ending the poll now. All right, and we have two more questions, just so everybody doesn't think this is going on forever. So the next question is, what will be required for such audiences to be able to use these outputs? I'm not even sure what that question means.
It requires a long answer. It's not very easy to.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess my interpretation of what this question means is around, you know, what it's about the products that might be usable. But I must have been when I was collecting the questions, I must have been on a train and not thinking carefully. But
I think No, go ahead, Tom.
I was just going to say that this makes me think then about, we talked earlier about how we are engaging Indigenous audiences in this, and how our specific outputs might be tailored to that. And also, we didn't include in our questions any, we asked what country people are from, but not necessarily if they're from an Indigenous people, which would be interesting to see if those others were Indigenous organizations.
Right.
Who are interested in what we're doing. So it would be interesting to know that. So if anyone is from an Indigenous group on the call, then please let us know.
And again, we have people answering in writing, but you're also welcome to share your answers by other means.
Yeah, because it's a little strange. Just Gosia and Jenna and myself are looking at each other.
And we did get an answer in the Q&A there, Tom. So
Okay.
all right. So again, I'll give you sort of the 5-second warning to provide your answer. And then we'll be on to our last question for the group. I'm ending the poll now. And then the last question is, are the related Arctic research planning processes or recent planning efforts or reports that you think that, and again, this is specifically for our group. I mean, although you're welcome to, it's choices though. Oh, we have a technical problem. Is there, Nina, is there a way to quickly fix that, or is it a more complicated? Maybe we could ask people to put their answers in the
Yeah, just give me a minute. I will
I probably need
amend
to end the poll.
Yes, please.
Okay. I'm ending the poll.
Just a second. I will sorry about that.
That's okay. See, this is what happens when we try to get fancy. And for those of you who may be watching this, we invite you to, if you have answers to these questions, Gosia has shared the chat, and we welcome anybody who wants to provide their answers to this. I think probably we'll just ask if you, I mean, I think this is an important one, and one where any inputs are very much welcome to the group. I don't know, Nina, if you've been able to, oh, there we go.
You should be able to.
Is it ready now? Let's try. There we go. So here's the question again. Are there any, so this could be a document. You could just share a link to a document that you think would be useful. This could be other processes that are underway that you think we should be connecting to. And that we welcome any thoughts you have on, I'm a huge fan of not reinventing the wheel on these things. So if people have ideas of ways that we can be efficient and best use people's time, then that's always very welcome. And Tom, maybe while people are answering this last question, I'll leave that poll open and maybe turn the floor to you to sort of
Summarize.
give us some key takeaways as we move on.
Well, first of all, thanks for so many people taking time to join us. And this is our first time doing a webinar for this group, so it's helping us field test how we would like to present ourselves and the issues and the way we'd like to put things forward. And some items that have propped up that would be good for us to consider are, for example, next time we present our group, we were a little bit clearer on how we're trying to engage Indigenous knowledge holders or Indigenous representatives. The suggestion from Clive as well with regards to stakeholder mapping and mapping of ongoing cooperations. That's clearly something we can take back to our committee to discuss and look at. We also need to perhaps give a little bit of thought, as Gosia and others mentioned, with regards to how we're engaging youth, or how we're going to address the aspect of education of what we're doing. And that's something that we will be able to discuss with all of our fellow co-chairs in the different research groups later in October. So this is good information for us to take in as we try to see the linkages between these different groups, because many of the issues that people suggest, they're not unique to our particular group, but they cross over a whole range of the ICARP work. And as Gosia emphasizes as well, we are trying to focus on the vision, how we look forward and not what's happening exactly now. So that's something I think that we need to take a little bit to ourselves and consider how we how we present what we're doing in a structured way that people understand that. And we would encourage anyone who's interested in providing more information. You have our email address. By all means, contact all or any of us, and we're happy to engage and provide feedback. And as one of the participants mentioned, they'll be at the Arctic Circle. All three of us, I think, will be there. So please feel free to stop us in the corridors or chase us down, and we're happy to chat and to get your input or feedback on different aspects of the work in ICARP, be it in our group or if it's elsewhere, then we'll be able to help you to direct you to where you should go. I think that sort of covers it. There was a few different points here and there, and Gosia and Jen, please jump in if anyone was missed. But I think this has given us some good food for thought, and it's definitely given us some ideas of when we do a webinar in the future, how we can structure it so we get the best information out of that.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Tom. Gosia, did you want to add anything?
No, that was it. Just to echo thanks that Tom expressed to everyone who joined. Thank you really for giving time to be with us here, and we very much hope to stay in contact also moving forward with this work. Thank you.
Great. And just to warn you, I'm now going to end the last poll. It's been going for a while now, so I'm going to close that poll. And I also take note of question. We got some more information in the Q&A, which we've now collected. But yeah, just a huge thank you to everybody, and hope to have a chance to see you in person sometime soon.
Yeah, thank you very much. I just wanted to share quickly some information about the upcoming webinars. So we have 3 more RPTs webinars coming up. So please do register and join us for those. For example, we have a co-production indigenous-led methodologies as well. Somebody was asking about this. So please visit our websites following the QR code and register for the webinars. And see you soon. Thank you very much.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.